A few months ago, I went to Shantiniketan, founded and developed by the renowned Tagore family. In Shantiniketan on Saturdays, a hart takes place, called the Shonajuri Hart. A variety of artisans display their craft over there, ranging from clothing items to handbags, and to even instruments. This is where I got my Ektara from. After buying the Ektara and returning home, I decided to sample it, as finding a free, good sounding Ektara online didn't turn out to be an easy job, so I decided to make one myself. This video is me documenting my process of creating the sample instrument for the Ektara. The Ektara or the Ektara literally translates into one string. Ek meaning one and Tara meaning string. It comes in many shapes and sizes and has been made famous through Bauls and Fakiri Singers, who use it as one of their main accompaniment instruments. The Ektara is made up of dried bottle gourd or pumpkin shell. In my case, I'm using an Ektara which is made up of dried bottle gourd. The base of this gourd is covered with goat skin with a bamboo neck. A metal string is attached to the neck and the string is also fixed in place with a tuning peg. The Ektara is played by bending the two rods or the neck, which gives it its characteristic bending sound. It can be tuned to any scale, but due to its nature, only one note can be played during a performance. Hence, it is traditionally used as a drone by the singers. However, since we are going to be making a sample instrument, I will be sampling all the notes and programming it in a way that all the notes can be played without having to go through any sort of tuning procedure. For the sampling process, first I needed to figure out what is the range that I could possibly sample. I tried tuning it as high as I possibly could, and it was still the A3 note where it felt like the string was getting too tight. Hence, I decided to sample from C to A, and that for the next three notes, A sharp, B and C, I'd pitch shift them up. I decided to sample both the normal notes and the characteristic bending sound. This patch contains 3 round robins along with 3 different dynamic velocity layers. After doing some sample math which I learned from David Hilowitz, it seemed that if I was going to sample all the notes from C to A, that is 10 notes, I was going to end up with a total of 180 samples. 90 for the normal notes and 90 for the bends. Now 180 samples isn't too bad for an instrument, but since it is my very first sampling project, I decided it was probably not going to be worth the effort, and decided to only sample the white notes with the exception of F. Not to mention the Ektara is not easy to tune at all, and while it is easy to play, it is unforgiving when it comes to sampling. We'll see why in a moment. Now I had drastically reduced the number of samples to half of the original 180. I will be using FL Studio for everything, starting from recording to sample chopping to noise reduction and whatever post-processing is necessary. For the sampler, I chose Decent Sampler, which was created by David Hilowitz as a free alternative to Contact to get over the paywall. I will be programming the instrument using Sublime Text as my text editor of choice. The microphone that I'm using for recording is the Blue Snowball Ice. It is a USB microphone, but it'll do the job for now. My room isn't acoustically treated, so I'm using the curtains and other sound absorbing materials to get as low room sound as I possibly can. I started out with tuning and then recording, and it turned out to be quite a lengthy procedure. I had obviously underestimated the size of this project, but still it seemed quite within my capabilities. I started off with the C scale and recorded 3 round robins for every dynamic. I should instead say the C note because there's only one note over here. So I started off with the C note and recorded 3 round robins for every dynamic. So I recorded 3 round robins for the soft sound and then stopped the recording, did the same for the medium sound and then again the same thing for the loud sound. I merged all of this together into a single waveform so I could apply noise reduction on it. I should also mention tuning this instrument was not easy, as it is really hard to achieve accuracy here. Also, how you touch the Ektara and even where you place it makes a big difference in its sounds, so achieving consistency became a challenge in itself. I continued on with the other scales, and after I was done sampling all the other notes, which I mentioned earlier, it was now time for the bend sounds. The neck of the Ektara can be bent in a lot of different ways, but most of it can be replicated to a certain extent using pitch bend wheels. Hence, I decided to instead work on the most characteristic sound instead. For this specific sound, being careful with the soft notes became another thing to look out for. But after a few hours, I had sampled all of the notes that I would be needing for this project. Now the time came for processing all of these. So I began chopping all the samples up properly and then aligning all of them up and then merging them into a single wave file so that I would be able to apply noise reduction on them, and I removed whatever room sound that I could hear in the samples themselves. Then I had to make sure every sample's gain level was consistent throughout, and most of all I used a tuner to check if all the notes were in their correct frequencies. I also used a tuner VST as well to shift the notes perfectly to a specific frequency in case it was off. And after all of this was done, I exported all the audios from each project file to 2 folders, one for the normal notes and one for the bend notes. I was looking forward to this part and was dreading it at the same time. Now I had to program the samples into a decent sampler library. I have programmed instruments before, but it is still quite new to me. A simple CMD command can be easily used to get all the names of the samples if you're on Windows, after which I could use Sublime Text to edit that big chunk of text together. After watching a few tutorials by David, a lot of trial and error, messing up the note names and the velocities of the notes, the first patch was finally ready. This was the patch with the normal notes and not the bend ones. The Ektara is a drone instrument, hence making sure that the round robins got triggered properly was one of the main concerns. So I went with the random sequence mode, which ensures that if there are more than 2 round robins, then the algorithm makes sure to not hit the same one twice in a row. In our case, as mentioned previously, we have 3 round robins. These samples have voice muting, however they have a generous release of 0.5 seconds. I should also mention that the way these patches are programmed are not how the instrument can be played traditionally. Playing more than one note in a live performance would be impossible. However, I believe programming it in this way is a much better way to use the plugin compared to programming separate patches for each and every note. This way the instrument can be used in a way which has never been possible before, and if someone wants to use it in the normal way, as you would in a live performance, then the most common idea is to play the root note of the scale of whatever piece is being performed. I continued on to program the bending notes in a similar way as the normal notes, and once I finished programming and dealing with whatever issues had arrived, I had the 2 patches I required. The playability of these patches has a range of 1 octave from C3 to C4. After all of this was done, I added in a reverb effect, and then it was time to start working on the GUI. I have never designed the GUI before, so I have kept this relatively simple. On the top right we have the tone knob, which is a cutoff filter, and the reverb knob as well beside it. On the bottom right we have the global volume and panning knobs, and on the left we have the standard global ADSR controls, attack, decay, sustain and release controls.
These audio demos were made in a relatively short amount of time, and I didn't really spend too much time on mixing it or mastering it. It was done this way so you could get an idea of what to expect from this library all over. That is it for this video. This was not only my first time making a sample instrument from scratch, but also my first time recording and editing any kind of video like this. Any feedback would be greatly appreciated. If you like the video, do click on the like button.